The abyss doesn't speak to everyone, only to those who listen. They said you were different, too quiet, too intense, too much inside your own head. They laughed when you stared off into nothing, but you weren't staring at nothing. You were staring at everything. Every pattern, every hidden truth behind their small talk and scripted smiles. You noticed what others refuse to see, the way people lie through tone, how fear dresses up as kindness, how society rewards obedience and punishes originality. You felt it young, that invisible tension between what you see and what you're supposed to pretend not to see. That tension broke something in you, or maybe it awakened something. And that's when they started calling you names. Crazy, weird, too deep. But the truth is simple. They call you crazy because you refuse to stay asleep. You stop believing in the illusions that comfort them, and that makes you dangerous. Every generation has those who see through the curtain, and every generation tries to silence them, because the truth is uncomfortable, and people would rather hate you than change themselves. Remember this. Madness isn't seeing what isn't there. Madness is pretending not to see what is. You attend a reunion. Old faces, old smiles. Everyone has grown up, which really means they've shrunk into roles. They talk about jobs, mortgages, weddings, vacations, like life is a checklist of socially approved milestones. And you stand there watching. You try to blend in, but it's impossible. You've spent too many years studying human nature from the shadows. You can hear the lies vibrating underneath their laughter. You can see the anxiety twitching behind their eyes. You know half of them hate their lives, but they'd rather die pretending they're happy than admit they're lost. And when you speak, when you ask a real question, something raw, something about meaning, the room goes silent. They look at you like you broke a sacred rule. Because you did. You reminded them of something they spend their lives avoiding. Their reflection. You see, the herd doesn't gather for connection. It gathers for validation. To make sure everyone else is still asleep. To confirm that the dream is still real. But the deep thinker doesn't belong there. You walk among them like a ghost. You laugh when they laugh, but your mind is somewhere else. Observing, dissecting, understanding. They sense it. That quiet awareness behind your eyes. And it unnerves them. Because deep down they know you're not one of them anymore. You never were. There's a reason society fears thinkers. Not soldiers, not rebels, but thinkers. Because real thinking isn't memorizing facts. It's tearing down illusions. It's asking the kind of questions that melt the world people built to feel safe in. You learned early that truth has a cost. When you ask why, people don't give answers. They give anger. They call it overthinking when you touch the edge of truth. But the truth doesn't belong to the majority. It belongs to the few willing to stand in the fire of confusion, doubt, and isolation until their mind burns clean. Thinking deeply isn't glamorous. It's not romantic candlelight and quiet journals. It's sleepless nights. It's existential nausea. It's staring into the mirror and realizing you have no idea who you are anymore. You break the old self open, not because you want to, but because you have to. Because comfort feels like death. Most people trade freedom for comfort, but you traded comfort for truth. That's why they can't stand you. Because every time you speak, you make them question the ground under their feet. They call you crazy because it's easier than admitting they're trapped. They mock your depth because it reminds them of their shallowness. They hate your questions because they fear the answers. But deep thinkers are not dangerous because of what they say. They're dangerous because of what they see. Here's the twisted part. The people who call you crazy are often projecting. They sense something in you, a courage they've buried long ago. So instead of facing their own fears, they turn them into weapons and throw them at you. This is cognitive dissonance, the pain of holding two truths. 1, they admire your freedom. 2, they fear what it says about them. So their mind protects them with lies. You're too intense. You think too much. You'll never be happy that way. Translation: you remind me of everything I gave up. Projection is the ego's favorite trick. They see their repressed shadow in you, and they attack it, thinking they're defending themselves. But don't hate them for it. Pity them. They're prisoners of comfort, addicts of validation. They can't live without the noise because silence makes them face who they really are. Meanwhile, you're evolving. Every insult, every eye roll, every label they throw is fuel for your metamorphosis. Because here's the paradox. They need you more than you need them. Your existence exposes the collective lie. And though they'll never admit it, a small part of them is grateful you exist. Because in their darkest moments, when the mask slips, they'll remember you. The one they called crazy, the one who refused to break. Loneliness isn't a curse for thinkers. It's a language, and only the evolved can speak it. When you detach from the crowd, the silence feels unbearable at first. You start questioning everything, your worth, your sanity, your place in this chaotic world. But slowly, the silence begins to speak. You start hearing the quiet hum beneath reality. You feel the pulse of existence itself, the rhythm that no noise can hide. This is where transformation begins. Solitude is where the surface self dies and the deeper self emerges. It's not the death of connection. It's the birth of authenticity. People who fear loneliness never meet themselves. They run from silence because silence tells the truth. But you stayed. You faced it. You walked into the void and found a mirror waiting. That's why you can't go back. Once you've seen yourself clearly, the crowd feels static. The lonely ones aren't weak. They're rare. They're the few who stopped chasing noise and started listening to the soul's whisper. In a world addicted to distraction, silence is rebellion, and loneliness is freedom. Every era has its heretics. People born a century too early. Thinkers who see the future before the world is ready to face it. They're mocked, exiled, silenced. Only later do their ideas become genius. You've seen their faces in books and museums. Nietzsche, Tesla, Galileo, Van Gogh. Names that now inspire millions. But in their time, they were called insane. Society loves dead visionaries because they can't talk back. But living ones? They terrify people. Because a living visionary is a mirror, proof that evolution is possible, that truth still breathes. And nothing threatens mediocrity more than proof of greatness. Maybe you felt that too, being punished not for doing wrong, but for seeing ahead. You speak of things others will only understand years from now. You walk paths that don't exist yet. That's not madness. That's time travel. The world calls you crazy because it can't keep up. But one day they'll quote you. They'll study your words. They'll pretend they understood you all along. That's the destiny of those who think too soon. To be hated now and worshipped later. To be hated now and worshipped later. The system doesn't want thinkers. It wants workers. Predictable, compliant, efficient. Schools don't teach you how to think. They teach you how to obey. Memorize, repeat, forget. Get rewarded for compliance, not creativity. And when a mind like yours refuses the script, they label it disruptive. When you question authority, they call it attitude. When you challenge the lesson, they call it arrogance. You start learning a painful truth. The system fears individuality more than ignorance. Workplaces aren't much different. They drain your energy, then sell it back to you as success. A treadmill disguised as progress. A hamster wheel gilded with promotions and fake smiles. But deep down, you weren't built for cubicles and clocks. You were built for creation, for meaning, for something that sets your mind on fire. So they call you crazy when you quit. They call you lost when you reject the ladder. But what they don't realize is this. You're not lost. You're just walking a road they can't see. And every step away from their system is a step closer to yourself. Even love becomes a battlefield for deep thinkers. Because when you love deeply, you don't just touch bodies, you touch souls. You crave connection that doesn't end at the surface. You want conversations that unravel eternity. You want eyes that don't just look, but see. But most people don't want to be seen. They want to be validated. They want comfort, not awakening. So you become too much, too emotional, too analytical, too demanding. You ask questions love isn't ready for. You expect depth from people still learning to swim. And sometimes that breaks you. Because even in love, you end up alone, carrying truths too heavy to share. The family isn't immune either. They love you, but they don't get you. They call your solitude isolation. They mistake your silence for sadness. But you've learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's clarity. And not everyone deserves access to your inner world. If love can't meet you in the depths, it doesn't deserve you on the surface. Look around. A society addicted to distraction. Opinions sold like fast food. Anger farmed like currency. People think they're awake because they scroll. But they're sleepwalking, hypnotized by the glow of screens and the dopamine of outrage. Technology could have freed us. Instead, it enslaved us quietly, efficiently, beautifully. The algorithm doesn't care about truth or wisdom. It only cares about attention. And attention belongs to fear, vanity, and noise. Deep thinkers drown in this chaos because they can't compete with shallowness. Their message requires stillness, and stillness is forbidden. Politics is no better. Two sides screaming across a void, neither wanting truth, only victory. And those who speak sense are crushed between extremes. This is the zombified culture, where minds are replaced by memes, and emotions are manufactured for engagement. But you resist. You withdraw not out of arrogance, but preservation. Because silence is the last rebellion. Because attention is the last freedom. When you stop feeding the noise, you become invisible to it. And invisibility is the beginning of power. They called you crazy. But maybe that was the highest compliment you could ever receive. Because crazy is what every free mind looks like inside a cage. Crazy is what truth sounds like before it becomes common sense. Crazy is the label they give to those who refuse to die while still alive. You've walked through loneliness. You've stared into mirrors until the masks fell away. You've seen what they cannot bear to see and survived it. That makes you powerful. You're not broken. You're becoming. Every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every time you felt alien, it was your mind evolving beyond the collective illusion. You are the prototype of a new kind of human, not guided by comfort, but by awareness, not chasing validation, but seeking truth. This is your revolution, not with weapons or riots, but with wakefulness. The old world feeds on fear. Yours feeds on clarity. They will still mock you. They will still misunderstand you. But their words no longer have power, because you no longer need their approval. The day will come when they'll quote your words, use your ideas, and call them wisdom, and you'll smile quietly, because you'll remember when those same ideas made you an outcast. The evolution of consciousness isn't loud. It's silent, patient, relentless. And maybe, just maybe, the ones they called crazy were simply the first to wake up. So if you've ever been misunderstood, rejected, or labeled insane, remember, the deeper the soul, the darker the journey. But on the other side of that darkness is light that never fades, a quiet light, not the blinding kind that the world worships, but the subtle glow of self-awareness, the kind that doesn't need an audience to shine. That light is you, reborn. You who no longer chase. You who no longer beg for validation. You who no longer need to be understood, because you've finally understood yourself. They can call you mad, arrogant, delusional. It no longer matters. They're still fighting for a throne in a crumbling kingdom. You've already left the palace. Because power isn't control. It's detachment. Freedom isn't found in rebellion. It's found in realization. You become the storm they tried to escape. The silence they can't comprehend. The calm that terrifies the restless. Every scar became scripture. Every rejection became revelation. Every night you broke down was initiation. Now you stand in the ruins of who you once were. Not bitter, not broken, but awake. You've seen the machinery of the world, the masks, the noise, the illusions, and you've stepped outside of it. They still run in circles. You walk in silence. They still seek followers. You seek truth. They still crave validation. You crave vision. That's why they can't understand you. Because understanding you would mean confronting their own emptiness. And most would rather die in ignorance than live in awareness. But you chose the harder path. The path where you lose everything false. To gain one thing true. Yourself. Now, you're what they fear most. A human who thinks, feels, and sees without permission. You're living proof that the mind can evolve without approval, that consciousness doesn't need permission to expand. You're not here to be liked. You are here to awaken. And when they call you crazy again, smile. Because crazy has always been the word they use for those who break the chains first. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them laugh. While they chase comfort, you build clarity. While they worship illusions, you master the truth. While they rot in noise, you rise in silence. And when history rewrites the story, as it always does, your name won't just be remembered. It will be recognized, not as a rebel, not as a fool, but as a mind that saw through the game, a soul that remembered what others forgot, a human who became more than human, because they called you crazy. But in the end, it wasn't madness at all. It was evolution,